Today's guest speaker, Dr. Zephyr Teachout. For the past 4 years, Governor Cuomo has enforced his draconian education reform agenda on New York's public education system. His anti-teacher, pro-Pearson agenda has done tremendous damage to public education. His imposition of the tax cap, the APPR, charter schools, the Common Core standards, and high-stakes testing has harmed students, teachers, parents, taxpayers, and local communities. His anti-union views on tri-borough and tenure could potentially cause irreparable damage to our ability to collectively bargain and maintain our jobs. Fortunately, we have another choice for governor this year. The only pro-public education voice of Dr. Zephyr Teachout, who's running in the Democratic Party a primary against Governor Cuomo next Tuesday, September 9th. Dr. Teachout's education platform includes full and equal funding for New York's public schools, an end to high-stakes testing, protection of public education against privatization, the empowerment of New York's local school communities, and the end of the suspension pipeline. Dr. Teachout went so far as to state that one of her first orders of business as governor will be to call for the removal of John King as commissioner. Her public school policies resonate deeply with the rank and file membership of the PJSTA, and for those reasons, it is with great pleasure that I introduce to you the PJSTA endorsed candidate and the next governor of the state of New York, Zephyr Teachout.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I may have to lift this up a little bit. How's that? All right, can you hear me if I talk up here? No? Okay. So yes, we have too many kings in this state. My name is Zephyr Teachout. I will stand over here. My name is Zephyr Teachout, and I intend to be the next governor of the state of New York. The first woman governor. The first Asian American to win statewide. And we are going to have, here, maybe I'll hold it up here. We are going to have the upset of the century in 7 days if everybody who cares about the future of this state gets out there and gets all their friends to vote. So we're at this major crossroads right now in New York State, these two different futures that we face. I am running against Andrew Cuomo in the Democratic primary, although I sort of think he should be in the Republican primary. Yeah. Because one future, if we continue down the line of Andrew Cuomo's future, it's a vision of scarcity. We don't have enough to take care of our 8-year-olds and our 9-year-olds. We don't have enough to fund our infrastructure. We don't have enough to invest in our future, and we have to spend all our money looting from schools to pay for tax breaks for big bankers. I'll tell you about the future I believe in. I believe that New York State can have the best public schools in the nation and the world. And there's no magic bullet to that. Education is not putting a bunch of widgets through a machine. It is engaging with children, and children thrive when teachers are trusted. When you have small class sizes. When every child can be seen for who they are and for what talents they bring. Schools and children thrive when you have art, when you have music, when you have counselors, when you have a system that supports early intervention for those kids who need that. And I don't think, as a farmer I once met said that you can fatten a hog by weighing it.
Very good.
You cannot replace the investment we need to make in our public schools with testing. I first heard about Common Core from my hairdresser. She said her son, who used to love school, came home crying every day because he felt stupid. He was a creative kid, and it just didn't make sense to him, and he couldn't understand it. And at night, he'd be worried and anxious. And we started talking about it because the problem wasn't just that he was being tested, it's that the teachers were being tested. And so his teachers were bringing, whether they wanted to or not, they were bringing stress into the classroom. Because whether or not they could pay off their mortgage depended on how he did in school. Because their own pay was suddenly dependent on the kids they were supposed to be teaching. So it turned their jobs upside down. Because teachers go into teaching because they want to teach. Because they care about kids. Because they want to see that extraordinary development. When somebody who can't make sense of multiplication suddenly sees it and the light goes off in their eyes and they feel this new power over the world. They don't go into teaching because they want to make a lot of money. So what I saw, and then learning more about Common Core, is what I saw is that this testing regime and other forms of high-stakes testing totally misunderstand what education is all about. I believe in standards. I think anybody who goes into teaching believes in standards. They want the support to meet those standards. If we're going to have them, they have to be New York State standards, and they have to come from parents and teachers and community members, period. Bill Gates may be a smart man, but he shouldn't be able to spend $200 million on telling you what the kids in your classroom need to learn, because he is not a classroom teacher. And unlike Governor Andrew Cuomo, I know the difference between a person and a Pearson. A Pearson is a profit-making entity that doesn't care about how your kids are doing, but cares about how much money they make. And a person is what's supposed to be protected under the Constitution in terms of their rights to donate to campaigns, but the Supreme Court's getting a little confused about that too. No, a person is a complicated thing. And kids come with their own challenges and their own talents. And you have to be able to respond to those challenges and talents and not have your teaching be dictated by Pearson, by Bill Gates, or by anybody whose core interest is in profit making. I've spent some time as, I don't know if you know the program Girls on the Run. I've been a volunteer coach at Girls on the Run. I'm a big runner myself, just living in New York, working with coaching some middle school girls, bringing sports into their lives to increase their confidence. And I will tell you, as far as I can tell, as a private citizen, I've spent more time in classrooms in the last 4 years than Governor Andrew Cuomo. Because not only does he have the audacity to become the face of privatization, to become the face of Common Core, only after your pressure did he resist that, and the Long Island teachers in general have been on fire on calling out Andrew Cuomo. I am so impressed. But not only has he been pushing for more and more privatization, he has done it without even visiting classrooms, talking to teachers, and learning. And one of the basic jobs of any chief executive is to continue to learn, especially if you're going to be forcing new policies on people. So I supported Andrew Cuomo 4 years ago. I supported him. I loved his dad. And I supported him because he said he was going to clean up Albany. He said he was going to deal with the problem of corporate donations to campaigns and He said he was going to change the way we fund campaigns. He said he was going to close the loophole that allows corporations to donate directly and restore dignity to the office of governor. Well, I'm not going to talk about Moreland today, but he did stand on the steps of a Boss Tweed courthouse and say, "There's corruption in Albany that would make Boss Tweed blush." Setting up an anti-corruption commission and then shutting it down when it gets too close to your old friends would make Boss Tweed blush. But he has been a total disappointment on the corruption, and the corruption that we've seen in our system is the reason he is looting from our schools, and the reason he is not visiting our schools and talking to teachers and talking to parents, because his priority has been his big donors from the beginning. It has been tax breaks for big banks. It has been trying to push back the millionaire's tax, trying to lower the corporate tax. It is a classic Republican trickle-down agenda that does not work and does not serve our children. So I'll tell you one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this, and then I can take some questions. My first job out of Yale, I did a lot of substitute teaching, and then I was a special education teacher's aide in a small rural public school. We were lucky enough to have a really small class, a third grade class of about 12 kids, and I had a great classroom teacher, and I was there working with some kids who needed some help. I was particularly focused on one kid who needed help in math and writing. And I'll tell you, even if just with that small class, if I hadn't been there, it would have been a lot harder for the classroom teacher to do her work. So this kid, when I met him, had been through 5 foster homes. He was in his 5th. He'd been separated from his brother and then brought back together. He brought a lot of anger into the class. And when I met him in writing, he said, "I don't have an imagination." I'd say, "Write a story." And he's like, "I can't, I don't have an imagination." So every day in writing class, he'd just go like this, scribble, 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 scribble. And eventually, I started just reading his scribbles out loud and telling him what he'd written. "Look, you know, there's a dragon, and the dragon climbed the mountain." And we'll call him Jim, and Jim was on the dragon, and he loved these stories. You know, first he was like, "No," but first he loved these stories. And then I started scribbling, and then he would read my stories out loud to me. And he'd still insist he had no imagination, right? "I'm just reading your stories." And he read all these stories about trolls and traveling with his brother and going overseas and coming back together, very sweet stories. And all of a sudden he started doing better in math. And I said, "What's going on?" And he said, well, he also said he was stupid. "I'm stupid, I have no imagination." And he said, "Well, I still don't understand math, but when I crack my knuckles, the trolls that sleep in my knuckles wake up, and they travel up my arm and into my ear, and they whisper the answer to the math problems." I happen to know he's doing pretty well now, and I was just with him for 1 term, and I don't think what I did made a difference, but I do think being in public schools where teachers could pay attention to him and see him for who he was, I know that made a difference. And I imagine him in high stress. When he was a kid with an antenna for stress. Imagine him in a high stress classroom that doesn't have the resources. And he couldn't have handled that. He would have continued to insist that he had no imagination and was stupid. But when a kid says they have no imagination, you know they're wrong. You know somebody has told them that. What worries me is when a state says it has no imagination. When it says we don't have the resources, we can't have the best public schools in the country, we can't invest because we need to pay off our oligarchs. We need to beg at the feet of the big bankers, otherwise they aren't going to stay here. Well, New York State has thrived when we trust our imagination and invest in our public education and invest in our infrastructure. And to me, public education is the infrastructure of democracy. So we are not just having a battle about public education, we are having a battle about the soul of democracy itself. So we now have the endorsement of the National Organization for Women, the Sierra Club, the Nation Magazine, the Port Jefferson Stop Teachers Association, the Buffalo Teachers Association. I can't do the full list. I'm going to do a fuller list at the press conference in a little bit. But we are getting so much press and so much attention, and all we need is 350,000 votes next week. 350,000 votes or 400,000 votes. I will win the Democratic primary because it's going to be a low turnout primary. And Governor Andrew Cuomo has what, $30 million. He's spending $1 million a week trying to say that he's not paying attention to me. He's paying a lot of attention. Tried to kick me off the ballot, tried to keep me off the ballot. But we have an opportunity here to really change history. And this isn't going to happen because I do it. It's going to happen because you're doing it. So I'm a vote counter. In this room, I count 3,000 votes. Because all of you have friends, all of you have colleagues, and all of you have colleagues all around the state. So there are a lot of people who still don't know about me, and what we know is once people know there is a serious challenge to Andrew Cuomo, who's actually a Democrat, they get excited. Thank you so much for this endorsement. It's the first endorsement I heard about on Twitter. I was thrilled to do it. Thank you so much.